Brazil. In this book from 1978, there's something written about it, and there is written that it is in South America. And that it is a big country, the 5th largest country in the world, and it is half a continent of South America. The book is also saying why. So now jumping a bit in front to history. The Pope split up who was controlling what between Portugal and Spain in 1494. And a big part of America was then set by the Pope to be ruled by Spain, Central America, and I think also the western side of South America, the book isn't saying it. And the other part was then, the Pope said that, ruled by Portugal, Brazil, for example. And Spain split up the territory which Spain was ruling into multiple different captivas or something, and Portugal kept Brazil as one and ruled it even actually from Brazil out. And Portugal also had not so much interest to rule Brazil. It was more putting its effort into rule its Asia colonies. And that is the reason why Brazil is one big country, because Central America and the other countries won the other territories, the other regions into which it was split by Spain, gained individually independence. Brazil stayed one country and gained independence as one country. Actually, the book is saying how. Let's jump in front of it. The book is saying that in 1808 there were the Napoleonic Wars in Europe raging, and that the Portuguese family had to flee. With help of the British Navy, they fled to Brazil. And then it became the place from where the royal family of Portugal was ruling, 1808, until 1821. I think it was Rio de Janeiro, in the more southern part on the coast. 1821, the king goes back, and his son stays there as the regent. 1 year later, in 1822, his son Pedro I declares himself the emperor, and Brazil is no longer a country ruled by Portugal. It was ruled by Dom Pedro I and his son Dom Pedro II. The book is saying that the country prospered. In 1888 was the abolition of slavery in Brazil, and in 1889 there was a feeling of Republican feeling, is the book saying, Republican feeling growing, and also large estate owners who no longer had slaves were not happy. And in 1889 there was then the abdication of Dom Pedro II, and the country was ruled constitutionally until 1930. Then there came the Great Depression, the coffee market didn't do well, and I think it was Vargas who was then ruling, 1950, 1954. And then Kubitschenko was ruling, the reforms were made, and then Gouliard was ruling, and then the military took over. And the book is saying that the military made the economic miracle, with Brazil increasing in a broader width of economically things increasing possible, the economic miracle, as the book say, but also was repressing dissent. Also, other things were also done at the time to not so have so easy tax collecting, but more vigorously, more stronger, and using the tax money in multiple different things, also for social things. And the country has started to build a merchant fleet to make exports possible, to expand electricity schemes, and to build a highway, for example, from Parana, Belém down to Brasilia, the capital. So multiple different things, but also repressed dissent. There the book ends. The book is from 1978. Okay, now I went a bit off of a presentation. First, the geography. That is Brazil and South America. And it is Uruguay, and some ways, I think, Paraguay and Argentina, a little thing. And then Peru, where the Amazon is protruding in, and it's still possible to navigate there. Then Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, Suriname, and French Guiana. That are the neighboring countries. And what else? Now in the north has the Amazon. Half the country is the Amazon. The country has 8 million square kilometers and 110 million people are living there, and 93% of them are Catholics. That is the country with the most Catholic people living there at all. Now, in the north, almost half a country is the Amazon basin. There's a big Amazon going through with lots of big tributaries, for example, Xena and the Madeira River. And some parts of it are navigatable. The tributaries, which are long, big rivers, they are not so good if they're navigatable with ships. They are rapids, and that's not so good to drive through with a ship. And there's tropical forest. And then there is the Central Plateau. There Brasilia was made while one of them was president. Brasilia was made from scratch. The book is indicating actually from scratch on federal land. Brasilia was founded and built, and that is the capital, Brasilia. And that's one big river system is the Amazon. Another one is the Parana river system, close to Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. And not close, the country is big, 4,000 times 4,000 kilometers, 8 million square kilometers, because it's not getting full square, it is very shorter, but 4,000 times 4,000 kilometers. And then the Central Plateau, there are Caatinga, they're a bit more north growing. There are some regions where it is actually in the inside of the country not raining sometimes the whole year. It's a bit more in other regions. The country is big, has several climate zones. And in the south, there's pampas like in Argentina and Uruguay. It's a grassland, savanna. So different regions of it. Now, what is the country producing? I said something to the expert in the merchant fleet. And now it is doing a lot of livestock. The country doesn't have so much energy, the thing at the side. There's only little coal. It was some oil found offshore of Rio de Janeiro. But not much coal, not much coal, not much oil and gas. The country is investing in hydroelectricity. With the many big rivers, it is trying to build dams to get water pressed against it and to make turbines and with electricity. Also with other countries at the Parana river system, that is trying to be done. The longest river, which is wholly in Brazil, is the South Francisco, going from the center from Minas Gerais northwards. 4,000 kilometers or something is it long, wholly in Brazil. The Amazon River is the second longest river behind the Nile, 6,516 kilometers long. But it goes also into Peru and other countries. And what are the exports? Coffee. I said already the coffee crisis in the 1930s, but it's still producing a lot of coffee. Coffee, bananas, soybeans, livestock, some minerals also, quartz, rice, the second largest producer of the rice in the world. So quartz and asbestos, maybe not anymore, and manganese. And there was not so much interest into the center of the city, only when gold and silver was found at Minas Gerais, more in the center, the Central Plateau, then more people went to the inside. There were many people immigrating there. People from Japan and the Middle East and Portugal came mainly there. There were living 1 to 3 million people previously there. And when the Pedro Alvaro something, it was as the first Portuguese person discovered. So the first person from Portugal who discovered it was Pedro Alvarez something in 1500, is the book saying. And now many of these people from Portugal and Japan and from the Middle East over the time started to intermarry, and also the African slaves brought by Portugal from people enslaved in Africa over, they were intermarrying, and that is why the country Brazil has a very unique diversity of ethnicity. Not to the slavery. 3 to 4 million enslaved people were brought from Africa from the 16th century to 1888 to Brazil and forced to work there. The Indian population also, the population previously living there also declined, as the book is saying, dramatically by over 9%, because one reason was diseases that the people were with the diseases which the people from Europe were brought with. Some people died of that, other people were killed, and others were also captured, forced to work, and some of them also killed. And there's certainly more shades to the climate. It is around 25 degrees more in the north. The Amazon basin is also called Inferno there, the green hell, but it's actually not so hot there, just 25 degrees, and not much changing of the temperatures. Further down in the south, it is a bit colder, also in the winter, 15 degrees. So it has different climate zones. In the northern region of the Amazon, that is almost the same temperature all the time at the equator. Further south, 4,000 kilometers south, there's also winter, 15 degrees, which is still quite warm, 15 degrees, 25 in the summer. And I think that was mostly what was said here to Brazil on these two big pages. That is according to the Reader's Digest Library of Modern Knowledge, Book 3, Part 23, Nations and Places, written by Monica Beckinsale, Robert Beckinsale, Harold Blackmore, DJ Dwight, Keith Lure, Stuart and Nancy McMillan, R.E.H. Miller, Kevin Rafferty, D.H. Sinclair, Arthur Spencer, G.S. Story, James Waltersey and Kenneth Walton on the pages 1136 and 1137, all written in the year 1978. The positions and views expressed are the ones of a source and don't necessarily align with my own or with the ones of entities spoken of. I'm trying to learn international studies, today Brazil, and after we've done that, we're gonna do tiptoe yoga, and if you participate in the tiptoe yoga, then it's at your own risk. And this is part 3, we're having a big entry, and we're reading now on here. People and history, we had economy and overall geography. So now, people and history, the book is from 1978. The early Portuguese settlers in Brazil were the remarkable three from color prejudice, intermarrying with the Indians they found in the country, and later with the African slaves they brought in. Okay, they're saying, it were the Portuguese coming to Brazil, in the last part I wasn't sure if it was Spain or Portugal, it were the Portuguese coming to Brazil, and that they had not so strong prejudice against marrying the people living there, or also then the slaves which were brought, or the people enslaved from Africa. The massive immigration from Europe to Middle East and Japan that added to this original mixture has resulted in a population of unique ethnic diversity. Okay, many people from Europe, from the Middle East and Japan went to Brazil, and they have married and living together also then with the people who are descendants of people from the Portuguese and the people living there already, and also the people enslaved from Africa brought there. And that has led to a unique diversity in the country. There were probably 1 to 3 million Indians in Brazil when the Portuguese arrived. So 1 to 3 million Indians living there. Many Indians were killed and others captured and put to work. Many killed, others forced to work. Their resistance to European diseases was low, and those who came in contact with white men, so people with white skin, dwindled in numbers. Okay, they are saying here that many were killed, many forced to work, and many also died from diseases if they came into contact with the people from Europe. Even in the 20th century, Indians were enslaved to gather wild rubber and butchered when they were no longer wanted. So even 1900 something, the people living there already longer, for hundreds of years or thousands of years, were still enslaved and killed if they were not needed sometimes. The work of a Brazilian Indian service. Okay, the Brazilian Indian service, founded by General Candido Rondon and the Villas Boas Bravas, did something to mitigate the Indians' lot. Okay, two people started to fight for less crucial treatment. General Candido, leader of a Brazilian Indian service, and the Villas Boas, two Bravas. In recent years, so 1978 is the book. In recent years, however, there has been strong evidence that the pressure to open up the interior has again resulted in the maltreatment and even murder of Indians. It could be they said the interior of Brazil was firstly not so much regarded. Maybe that now people moved more inland, and even in the 20th century people were killed and maltreated. It is estimated there are about 200,000 left. I don't know who now. African slaves were brought into Brazil because the Indians made poor laborers. Okay, they enslaved people in Africa and brought them over there. Between 3 to 4 million arrived between the 16th century and the evolution of slavery in 1888. In general, the slaves' descendants have been assimilated well. I think that means to integrate and live together, but I'm not sure. So we're saying 16th to 1888 was slavery in Brazil. 3-4 million people were enslaved and brought to Brazil. Immigration from Europe and elsewhere has been mainly into the southwest and south. So many people from Europe came to south and southwest. Between 1820 and 1939, about 3/4 were Portuguese, Italian and Spanish, but the Germans founded whole colonies in the south. Okay, 1820 and so the Napoleonic time, and 1939, the beginning of the Second World War. Many people from Portugal, Italian, and Spain came, and from Germany even whole groups and forming or settling down as a whole colony. Japanese settlers were drawn to market gardening on the outskirts of Sao Paulo and cultivating pepper at the mouth of the Amazon. Okay, people from Japan came to Sao Paulo and to the mouth of the Amazon. There was another wave of immigration from Europe after the Second World War. Okay, after the Second World War, more people came. The population is increasing at the rate of 3% a year. About 50% of the population is under 20, with only 5% over 60. Brazil is the biggest Roman Catholic nation in the world. 93% of its people are Catholics. I was giving up. If you were here for international studies, you can go directly to the next part, where we're going to read the rest. And so we don't even have time for the full thing. Then we're going to have still half a page left. If you stay here and participate in the tiptoe yoga, then it's better the arms. Have feet same together, relief in the arms up, onto tiptoe, out and down. Go always to the big toe with the weight. In and up, out and down. In and up, out open to the side. In and up, out open to the other side. In and up, out open to the side, make an inch of space between the feet. In and up, out sink down. In and up, out open to the side. In and up, out and down. In and up, and out lean onto the knees, looking over the heels down. Breathe in, and out make a hell of a back. In middle, out the belly. In middle, out the belly. In middle, out the belly. Middle, out come with a round back, up at the top of backwards. And the arms up onto tiptoe. And out sink down. This can go onto the knees. In and up. And out and down. In and up. Out and heels down. One foot points in front, the other one to the side. In the arms up. Out bend the front leg, come with the front leg on the tiptoe. In the reach in front. Out lean back. In straighten the front leg. Out bend it. Arms down, heels down. Heel down. To the other side, breathe in. Out bend the front leg, come with the front leg on the tiptoe. In the reach in front. Out lean back. In straighten the front leg. Out bend it again down into the middle. Heel down. 1 foot points to the outside, the other one also. In the arms up on the tiptoe. Out sink down. In, pretend to push something heavy upwards. Out and down. In and up. Out and down. In and up. Out, hands down, heels down. And have feet standing together. In arms up on the tiptoe. And out and down. Bend the right leg. Stretch the left one. And change. Stretch the right one. Again middle. Out with the feet to the side. Breathe in. Out over to one leg. Breathe in. Out over to the other leg. Breathe again in. Out into the middle. And close the feet. Breathe again in. And out. Again in. And now come slowly with a round back up at the top of backwards. Shoulder round. In the arms up. And hands again down. That was the tiptoe yoga. I thank you very much and until next time.